Most people think that once they've signed their will, they're done. But usually that's just the beginning. If you don't follow through on a few key steps, your estate plan may not work as intended. Hi, I'm John Strohmeyer with Strohmeyer Law, where we help our clients leave no unfinished business. While I am a lawyer, I am not your lawyer. So don't take the advice of some talking head on the internet. Make sure you talk to your own advisors about your specific circumstances. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now, today we're going to be talking about what you need to be doing after signing your will to make sure your estate plan actually works. This is going to fall under the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse of potential delays and frustration. Again, if your assets don't line up with your plan, your family could be in for a long and complicated probate process. Now, today we're going to be talking about 4 key things to do after signing your will. Again, your will is only going to control your probate property. So assets that don't have some sort of legal label that says who gets it after you've passed. So remember that your will is only going to control your probate assets. These are things that don't have some sort of legal label that direct who owns it after you've passed. So a 401k or IRA will have a beneficiary designation. You may have funded an asset into a revocable management trust. Those are both examples of assets that are no longer probate property. For the beneficiary designation, that's a contract you've signed with that financial custodian. It's out of the probate process. It doesn't matter what your will says. For the asset funded into the revocable trust, also not a probate asset because it's subject to the terms of the trust. So let's get into it. Thing number 1, double check your beneficiary designations. Your will, as I mentioned, only controls assets that don't have beneficiary designations. So you'll want to check your accounts that have beneficiary designations. Things like 401k accounts, 403bs, IRAs, life insurance, payable on death accounts, transfer on death accounts, and even annuities. These are all things where you've effectively signed a contract with that financial custodian. And what you have done with them is make an agreement. You're going to hold this asset for me, and when I pass, you're going to give the assets to whomever I've listed in that beneficiary designation. So you want to make sure that those beneficiary designations align with your overall plan. You don't want to name someone on an account if they're not the right person. Similarly, if you've named somebody in the beneficiary designation but named something else in the will, generally that beneficiary designation is going to override whatever the will says. So make sure that your beneficiary designations align with what your plan is. And this is where I say sometimes we have beneficiary designations that intentionally don't align with the will. Why? Well, you may have a problematic beneficiary where it's just easier to give them something but not include them in the probate process. Other times, it may be tax beneficial to have something like an IRA, which will distribute taxable income to a beneficiary, to instead of going through the estate, go directly to a charity so that the charity gets the benefit of their own charitable status. They're not going to pay income tax on the assets received. This effectively leverages that gift to a charity where a beneficiary or even of your estate would have to pay income tax on it. One of the most effective things we can do for our clients is going through their asset list line by line with them. We want to make sure that we know where all their bank accounts, investment accounts, real estate, anything of value is, because the moment they've passed away, we won't be able to ask them any more questions about where to find things. We want to make sure we know where to go find it, and we're not searching it for a needle in a haystack. Similarly, if you have a revocable trust account, you're going to want to make sure that you've got a good list of the assets that are funded into that trust so that the trustee or successor trustee knows where to find things. Again, you may want to consider adding payable on death or transfer on death provisions to accounts so that people know what to do, that they have the financial liquidity to take care of things if something were to happen to you. Task number 3, store your will and key documents securely, but also accessibly. A will that's been locked away in a safe deposit box is safe. The problem is it may take a court order to get it if you don't tell anybody where to find it. Again, will anybody know that you have a will or even a safe deposit box if you haven't told them somehow? So make sure that you've kept copies in a safe place. Keep, for example, a red notebook somewhere in your house that will be easily findable if you're not around. You don't necessarily want to hide it so well that nobody can find it. You do want people to know where to find these documents. Consider giving copies of your documents to your agents, executors, and trustees so they'll have their own copy for when the time comes. You don't necessarily need to give them full copies of your financial statements, but just making sure they know where your documents are and where they can find them later on will save them a lot of headaches. Fourth and finally, don't forget to update your estate plan. These are not one and done tasks. Your estate plan will grow and change over the years based on who you are, the people in your plan, the assets you own, and just changes in the law. Make sure that you're reviewing it regularly to be sure that it still aligns with what you want to do. As I mentioned before, checking those beneficiary designations is also part of it. If you've had assets that go up or down in value, make sure that the beneficiary designations still align with what you're looking to do. So, pulling it all together, remember that signing your will isn't really the end point. It is the end of drafting documents, but it's not the end of making sure your plan works. You'll spend more or less the rest of your life making sure that plan works. So, by checking beneficiary designations, keeping a good list of assets, and making sure your bank accounts are updated, you'll be able to make sure that your plan leaves no unfinished business. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.